Alright. Hello, everybody. It's me, Dylan from Critical Co-op here, with another author from Word Posse, and we're going to do an interview. And there's a pop-up here. And how about you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Marella Sands, and I'm author of Skyknife and Serpent and Storm that were out from Tor some years ago. I've written books for educational publishers, and then my most recent book is Pandora's Mirror from Word Posse.
So, some of your early writing experiences you've already listed, right?
Well, yeah, the early published experiences. I first started trying to get published in 1988 and was very horrible at it, both at the writing and the getting published part. I didn't actually get published. I did get a lot of rejection slips, but it really wasn't until I joined the writers group Alternate Historians in 1991 that I started getting a lot of good direction and training on how to write and how to revise and where to send your stories.
So, what was one of the first books that you wrote then?
The first book that I wrote was actually a Star Trek tie-in novel. At that time, Pocket Books was looking for some Star Trek novels, and it didn't sell, but because I knew they were looking for them, and I knew the characters already, I didn't have to invent the world. I went ahead and tried that for my first shot out the gate. So, in one sense, it was easier to write because I didn't have to make up the world. But it did at least get me through the whole writing of my first novel experience.
So, what made you decide to kind of start writing novels?
Probably being in the writers group. Before then, I had written short stories, awful ones. When I first joined the group, those were the stories I put through the group, and so those were the stories that I really started to work on originally with learning how to edit myself and expand, because I used to be very I put a lot of dialogue in, but there wouldn't be a lot of description or setting, things like that. So there were a lot of things I had to learn, and once I had kind of gotten that down a little bit, then I started trying to learn how to write longer things.
So you're not only a writer, you also have a degree in anthropology. What exactly is that, for those who don't know?
Well, anthropology is sort of an umbrella term for several things. Archaeologists are anthropologists. The culture anthropologists who go out and live with people and learn their language and about their culture are also anthropologists. The forensic people that you see on TV talking in court cases about things, they're anthropologists. The people who study early hominids, they're also anthropologists. So anthropology encompasses a lot of things. I was more interested in the early hominid stuff. But I did my my master's thesis on feud and the Cold War because, for the very practical reason that I would be able to finish it in a year, and that way I only had to worry about funding 2 years of a master's education instead of more.
So how does that help you with your writing?
Well, I think just getting an education in general helps you learn how to learn. I mean, you learn how to use a library, you learn where to find sources, you learn how to evaluate sources, which ones are good, which ones maybe not so good. And maybe you find even a bad source that has some interesting stuff in it, but you need to be able to evaluate those things and how you're going to use it in your writing.
So tell me about the book that is being published on Amazon right now, Pandora's Mirror. What's that about? The characters? The
Okay,
setting?
Pandora's Mirror is about a parapsychologist, a guy who goes ghost hunting. Works at a junior college. And partly he works at junior college because I knew that he probably wouldn't have a lot of funding, and that way, the fact that he has some outdated equipment is easily explained. But he has students that he goes out ghost hunting with, and they find some ghosts, and it turns out that a particular house and the woman who lives in the house are haunted by quite a few things, and so he's going to try to get to the bottom of it. Meanwhile, the woman who lives in the house is also trying to get to the bottom of it, so they try to seek out what's going on together.
Are there any characters in the book that kind of don't really believe in ghosts until this encounter?
Well, my main character doesn't necessarily believe in them. He wants to find them. So it's more like he wants to figure out how to scientifically figure out how to identify what a ghost actually is in a science-based definition of the paranormal. So he's looking for ghosts, but he's looking for them scientifically, because this is a novel, of course. He finds them, and they're not very scientific. They're very fictional, but hopefully scary.
Well, where'd you get the idea for this one? What were you inspired by?
Well, I've always been interested in the paranormal. I think a lot of people are, because it's things that are unexplained, and those always intrigue people. But I, too, like the main character, I would rather know. I don't want to just believe that things that go bump in the night might be a ghost, because, if something goes bump in the night, maybe it's a ghost, maybe it's your house settling, or maybe it's an alien or a leprechaun. How do you know? How do you decide what is an alien versus a ghost versus a leprechaun versus a mouse? So you have to figure out some way to measure things, some way to define things, and that's the hard part. I've always been kind of interested in that kind of stuff. I just want to know how you figure out what those things are.
So did you watch any of those things like Ghost Hunters as not really facts or anything to base directly off of, but kind of as things to kind of look for inspiration, or no?
Not really. I watched those shows a couple of times, but I generally don't come away with a whole lot from them, except that the people on them seem really good at scaring themselves. They do a lot of things in the dark for no apparent reason, and freak themselves out. And then, they're all like, did you hear that? Did you see that? Did you feel that? And it's like, maybe you should turn on the lights. So I didn't really watch any of those shows for the book.
Well, they have technologies and weird things like that.
Well, I did buy books on ghost hunting, so I think I have an entire book on the kind of things you'll take with you on your ghost hunt, and it has everything from your EMF meters and various other kinds of electronic equipment to things like talcum powder and tape and string and the low-tech things that can help you. If you put talcum powder on the floor and don't tell the person who lives in the house or whatever, and then in the morning there's been ghostly activity, but you see someone's footprints, it wasn't a ghost. So there's all kinds of ways of finding out what's going on, not just electronic stuff, but even tape and powder.
So why ghosts in particular?
Well, I think they're just intriguing because people always want to know what happens when you die. Are my relatives still hanging around, or is there a way for me to contact my dearly departed, husband or wife or whatever? So people have always wanted to have answers to those questions, and so they really have a universal application. They interest the author, and they should interest the readers as well.
All right. So, how did you kind of meet the writers group, the alternate historians?
Okay, how I met them was at Archon one year, a science fiction convention here in town. I picked up a flyer about a magazine called Fresh Ink that was looking for short stories, and so I was trying to sell some short stories, and so I sent a story off to the editor, and he contacted me back, and he said, well, I'm not going to buy the story, but you know what, we have an opening in our writers group, and if you would like, you can try out for it. And I had heard of this writers group before. Someone had heard rumors of them. There was this writers group in town where you had to actually try out before they would let you in. And so I thought that was kind of odd. I didn't really understand that. But when I got the opportunity to try out, I did. And the thing was you had to send 2 or 3 short stories or a novel. And then they would read it and get back to you on whether or not you were in. And so I actually met Mark, who was the editor of Fresh Ink, at the Walden Books, where your mother worked, I believe, in South County there, and handed off the short stories. We chatted for about an hour and a half, and then he left, and I left, and 2 weeks later, he contacted me again and said, hey, you're in. This is when we're meeting next month. So, I got through the tryout.
So, this is published by Word Posse, which is the writers group, basically. What made you guys really think that you should go down the path of, self-publishing?
Well, I think things are changing really quickly. The whole digital thing is changing the game. It used to be if you were going to self-publish, you would have to print a bunch of books, because you'd have to find a printer to print them for you, and then to make it cost effective, you'd have to buy a bunch, then they'd be in your basement, and then you had to figure out some way to sell them, one by one out of your basement. And so in the old days, they used to say that a self-published novel generally would have 150 copies printed, which is about the minimum you could, I guess, have printed, and that most of them sold to the author. So, if you're going to just buy your own book, you might as well just print it off at Kinko's or something. That would have been cheaper. So in the old days, it was difficult. Now with on-demand publishing, you can upload the file to Amazon or wherever, and it gets, each book gets printed individually, and it's still cost efficient. So, you can go to Amazon, buy a book. It can be printed and bound and stuck in an envelope and mailed to you in 48 hours. And it didn't exist before. It was, just in cyberspace until someone ordered it. So things have gotten more efficient and cheaper. And so on that, the technical end, the practical end has gotten to where you can actually do this much more cost effectively. But also, publishing is changing. It always seems to get harder to get published. We have, most of us have sold books to the New York press before, and we've had agents. But some of us don't have them anymore for one reason or another, and but we still keep sending our stuff out, and we get rejection letters that say things like, "I love this, I couldn't put it down. Good luck with it somewhere else." I've had people tell me, "Let me know when this sells. I'll go buy a copy." But they're not going to represent it because it's not what's selling right now. They know that even if they love it, if they put the time into trying to sell it, it's not going to get sold. Or at least they have a strong suspicion that that's true. So, they have to look out for their bottom line, the agents. And the publishers are trying to look out for their bottom line. And so maybe what you wrote isn't what they think people are buying at the moment. It doesn't mean it's a bad book. So they'll tell you, "Hey, I really like this," but, they don't take it on. So there's not much way around that unless you're going to publish it yourself and try to market it yourself. So, each one of us has books that we've gotten basically rave rejections on. And so, why not? What's to lose?
What are some of the problems and stuff that you guys had to go through because of self-publishing?
Well, we haven't had any really problems yet. I mean, we're still on a learning curve. We decided to do this in August. It's now November. So it's only been about 12 or 13 weeks since we decided to go forward. So we've had to learn how to get things uploaded to Create Space, which is Amazon's print arm, how to get things, into the Kindle, how to, get the covers done and decide on fonts. And there's all sorts of little decisions like how are you going to do the headers on the pages? What type size do you use? What font are you going to use? What kind of little logo are you going to use? How often are you going to publish? What kind of books? Whatever you have to decide, we've now been having to decide besides just writing them. So we're all learning things, and I don't know, that I always enjoy learning things, so that's kind of fun too.
Well, what's your role in Word Posse?
I've been kind of the one learning most of the stuff at the moment, but everybody will get up to speed eventually, I'm sure. So I've been doing the typesetting, and Mark and I both did the researching on fonts, and I've been doing the covers. Now Debbie's book that's coming out in February, she's commissioned someone to do artwork for it. I did the first 3 covers, but I'll get the artwork from her artist, and then I'll put the branding items on it. We want all our covers to be individual covers, obviously, but to have a certain look, so that you can look at the book and know that's a Word Posse novel. So the branding stuff we're trying to keep across all of the books. So it's a bunch of decisions that we've had to make, and things that we've had to learn.
How did you kind of decide what style you wanted to do with the books, like the covers and?
Well, we just basically had a lot of emails. in between, we'd say, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And then I think Mark went online, found some covers he liked, took screenshots of them and said, I think this looks an interesting kind of style, or I think this is an interesting kind of style, or I think this is an interesting looking font. So everyone could kind of see and say, hey, yeah, I think that looks interesting. Maybe it's something along those lines, or, no, I don't really like that. So we emailed each other quite a bit.
I personally really like this sleek design that all the covers have on the sides of them. Because whenever you see that, you do go, wow, these must all be published by the same company or something. They must all be tied somehow. But it kind of just stands out a little bit.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So was there ever any really like reason that you chose a specific font, or was it just deciding randomly?
Well, not exactly randomly. I mean, Mark and I had decided that we would kind of be like the point people on fonts, and then once we decided on a few, let everybody else see them and put their vote in. We liked Alien League for the covers. It just has a very clean look to me. And it kind of works across genres as well, because at first I was thinking, well, should we have like a certain font for the like romance covers and a different font for science fiction covers? So what we tried to do, ended up doing, was trying to find a font that just kind of worked across genre. And so that was part of the branding, was finding that font. And fortunately, the guy who owns Alien League is willing to license it basically indefinitely for $20. So it's also extremely affordable. And so if anyone's listening who likes Alien League, you can contact the guy. He'll take $20 and you can use it whenever you want, however many times you want. Then Mark had looked at a bunch of different fonts for the interior. Because I would have gone with just something very standard like Garamond, perhaps. It has a nice clean look. And what we ended up with was Fanwood, which looks very similar. So, it doesn't look too different from Times New Roman. It just isn't Times New Roman, but it's easy to read. It scales up and down pretty well. So it doesn't matter if the font is 9-point or 22-point. It still works.
So all of you, well, the 3 books that are being published right now, The Naturalist, Pandora's Mirror, and Sleeping the Churchyard Sleep, they all had their first physical copies at Archon. What was that kind of like, getting to, kind of bring this thing that you've been working on for a while into the public for the first time?
It was really nice to have those and to be able to show them off. It wasn't quite, I have to say, like getting my the very first novel. I mean, when I got my first copy of Skyknife, so my first novel ever, I actually stayed home from work because the UPS guy didn't drop it off at my apartment. He left me a little yellow note saying I had to sign for it. And so I realized that I was going to be at work the next day. I wouldn't be able to sign for it then either. So I just decided I wouldn't work that next day and I would wait all day at home for the UPS man, which I did. And that was very, very exciting. So this was also exciting because, it's my cover. I designed it. And it's, us doing something together. So it was exciting in a different way.
So you kind of already said what the current style of publishing is, like official publishing, not independent. What do you think the future of publishing may look like?
I don't know. I assume that people will get more and more into the digital side of things, and that perhaps print books will never go away, but they may become more of a specialty item. I don't know. But as things get more digital, it may get more difficult to figure out how to market them, even because it's hard enough now to try to get noticed in the thousands of books that are published every month. But when there's even more books, and who knows? It'll be interesting. I mean, just the past 20 or 30 years with things changing so much, it's been quite an interesting ride. But it's probably just going to get even more interesting as time goes on.
Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. That was our last question, and I can't really think of anywhere to stem from that. So it's been great talking to you and interviewing you. I really hope anyone who listens to this will go out and buy a copy of any of them, or any of the books
or all
that are
of
being
them.
Published. Yeah,
all WordPress, all Posse books. Go buy them all.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, no problem. All right, so see you all in the next video, whatever that might be. I have no clue. See ya.